your name and a little bit about what you did growing up and what kind of fish you did.
All right. My name is Jerry Beckham, and I was born and raised in Cedar. I have 5 sisters and 5 brothers that were raised here. My daddy was a commercial fisherman. He didn't like the crab, and he didn't like the net fish, but he always made a living shucking oysters, or all of them. That's basically where I come from, you know. They were trying to do a 0 tolerance on oysters one time. The Marine Fisheries was going to pass something where you couldn't have one little oyster in a bag. If you did, it's a $300 fine. They didn't realize what they were doing. I said, you're just putting people, taking their living away from them, because there's no way you can do that. You can put a limit on how many you can get or anything, but don't do that. But they got it down to 10% now, I think. But it's just the people, like Mike said a while ago, won't listen to the biologists. They go on what they feel, how they feel. They feel like this needs to be done. They go get some people together and they work on getting it passed. For me, I'm like Johnny Cash. I remember when I was a lad, things were hard, and things were bad. But there's a silver lining, and it'll come. They just came down and just grabbed our living. Because there's a few people wanted it that way, had a little money, and that's basically it is. Well, they probably don't want to hear me.
Oh, yes, we do.
But it's been rough watching, like Mike says, the older fishermen. I used to watch him when I was younger to try to learn how, you know, and they'd correct me. Jerry, you shouldn't be catching those little mullet this time of the year. Those would be road mullet this winter. I said, how about my light bill? Is it gonna be turned off? Mr. Harsh finds used to keep me every time. But I learned a little about it, and I learned it's a good independent living. I used to blue crab, stone crab, oyster, and mullet fish. But now, I'm not able to eat any of it. All right, there you go, Al.
Anybody got a question? I'll tell a story then. Jerry mentioned Horace Fines, and he was an old fisherman. He was one of those that we would sit around and fish out on a windy day, and he'd tell stories. We'd all laugh, you know. And he was telling us a story one day about they all lived on Deer Island, him and his family. A lot of y'all don't know where Deer Island is, but it's halfway between here and Swanee River. And they had an old dog named Spot, and the house was up on stilts. Not because the government made them put it up. They put it up because they know it floods underneath. So anyway, they'd go to bed at night and didn't have but one blanket, and it had a hole in it. And the old dog Spot, he'd sleep with them, keep them warm. And underneath the hogs at night would get underneath that house and start messing around like hogs do. And old Spot would hear him, and he'd jump up, and they had a hole in the blanket. And the old dog would take off after the hog and carry the blanket with him. So they had to go hunt the dog down to get the blanket back. They didn't have one blanket.
Jerry talking about he liked fishing, crabbing. That's a lie. Jerry liked oystering. He's the best oysterman in the world, and oystering would get bad enough for the season to close, and he'd come up here and he'd say, I reckon I gotta go pull them crab traps out of the beggar weeds. Dang weeds and everything grow all up through his crab traps because he wouldn't use them unless he just had to. And I was the same way about oystering. I hated oystering. And there was times when there wasn't no crabs crawling, and I had to go oystering. But I had traps out there, and every day on the way oystering, I'd run out and I'd check my traps. And if I saw a few crabs, I'd take that culling tool that you cleaned up the oyster with, and I'd throw that thing just as far as I could out in the water, and I'd go back in, get me some bait, and come back to the crab. We all Hal liked fishing better than anything else. We all liked certain things, but we had to do it all to make a living. And that's like nets. Hal probably had 12, 14 different size nets. 4 different size nets just for mullet. Because certain time of year, you can use a small one, 2 6/8 stretch, and a 3-inch stretch. That's the mesh size. It would catch a certain size fish. Nets are very selective. They will let bigger fish will hit the net and bounce off, and smaller fish will go through it. So it's a very selective item, whereas a baited hook is the most unselective thing in the world. And we never did convince people of that, but it's a fact. It's why up until 1995, if you took the records from World War II on mullet catches, there were good years and bad years. But you could take a ruler and draw it across the top of the good years and across the bottom of the bad years. And it was just like that since World War II. Nothing more stable, nothing better than fishing. Now, they were putting a lot of laws on us, and we helped them write them, but they did good. When the net ban came about, fishing was not as good as it was 50 years ago, but it was better than it was 10 years before that. And it would have gotten progressively better because we were working with the state. They tried to put some crazy things on us, like Jerry was talking about the 0 tolerance small oysters. You take an oyster that's got a piece of spat about that long on him that falls off in the bag, they could have wrote you a ticket, which is crazy. But I think we filed as an organization, Organized Fishermen of Florida, I think we filed in the time we were working with them over 200 rule challenges, and we never lost one. And all it was is they would say, you can't fish for 30 days during roe season when they're having the eggs. That's unacceptable. We have to fish. So we just went to them and said, what if we don't fish from Friday evening till Monday morning during run season? That gave them their 30 days right there. Got us out of sight, out of mind on the weekends, and was good for the fish. Everything worked good. So, but it was funny. Jerry'd be oystering, and he'd come in with $500, $600, $700 worth of oysters every day, and nobody cared, because there ain't nobody else could do it, for one thing. But you let a fisherman come in with 500 or 600 pounds of crab, and everybody that had nets and crab traps, there they went. Well, the next day they was gone. But they didn't care how much money Jerry made. They wasn't going over straight. Yes, ma'am.
Is anybody challenging the net law in any states these days?
Well, they fight it, but if they do it through constitutional amendment, you can't challenge it. You can only do another constitutional amendment, and it's very expensive and it's very hard to do.
In any other states, the United States is full coast.
Right.
Any other states?
Yes, right. Our director from Organized Fishermen of Florida is in North Carolina right now, and they're being pretty successful. The bad thing is they learn from us. So, we.
Sadder but wiser.
Yes. What do y'all?
Mike? I think last summer you talked about just how big these nets were, which was really fascinating to me. And then so in the 90s or in the early 90s, how many guys or families or whatever were there in Cedar Key that were making their living off it?
There were about 7,500 commercial fishermen in the state.
How many in Cedar Key, do you know?
About. Trying to remember how many checks we wrote.
You talk about these laws they pass and all the size of oysters and all that stuff. I was oystering one day, and here came the Marine Patrol coming up to me to check equipment in my boat, and check the size of the little oysters and all that. And I asked him, I said, now, those oysters are illegal. You could write me a ticket. He said, no, they're not quite enough. And I said, well, what about the ones coming in here in your boat that you hit? How many little oysters you reckon you killed coming in here to me? And he says, oh, a bunch. I said, you don't get a ticket, but I get a ticket. So, just don't these laws don't add up to really what's happening. People don't realize what they're voting for. I think a lot of it was, I mean, you take all of North Florida, ain't got as many votes as Miami has got.
No condominium.
Yeah. So if you're fighting against people.
I guess I'll tell another story. We had a guy here named David Colson. We all know David Colson. And he was oystering up below the line towards 20, and he got caught. Marine Patrol caught him. He was in closed waters. And so he went to court, and W.O. Beecham was judge at the time. And David's standing up there, and W.O. said, "David, what do you have to say for yourself?" He said, "Judge, well, there's an imaginary line up there," and he says, "one side is legal and the other side is illegal." He said, "and I imagined that I was on the legal side."
To answer your question about fishermen, I think it was about fishermen, crabbers, oystermen, and everything. There was most of the time over 100, and then you had all their kids and everything that were going. Beth, what did you want? Oh, you raised your hand.
No, I did. I did. She did. See, I get accused of everything.
I wondered if, you know, it's still a painful, very painful conversation. In hindsight, that that you wish you could have done, that you didn't do, or that you didn't realize you could do.
The only thing that I know of that we could have done that would have made a difference was to somehow get to the legislature and have them change Florida's laws concerning the way that they can then circumvent the legislature with the constitutional amendment process. It just seems kind of silly to me to have the legislature, and supposedly if they don't do what you want, you get rid of them and get some more, or try. However, with our constitutional amendment process, it really doesn't matter whether they do what you want or not, because if you have enough money, you can get something put on the ballot. And for some reason, people seem to always vote yes on those things. I mean, it's stupid stuff. Like here a while back, it was the size of a pen that a hog could have babies in. How many of us know how big the dang pen needs to be for a hog to have babies? And, you know, it passed. I mean, it's crazy stuff like that. You know, but I don't know. You know.
So was it really the real estate lobby, or I don't even know?
No, it was all the recreational fishing clubs, and it was mostly the FCA at that time.
Okay.
And you know, they were holding big rallies, giving big prizes and all this kind of stuff, and we fought them, we debated them on TV and in the radio, and we could tear them up because we had all the statistical and biological data was in our favor. It was easy to just kill them on TV, or so they quit doing it, and they depended on the outdoor writers and all the newspapers all over Florida to be their puppets, you know, and the stuff they did was kind of dirty, you know, taking the really nice picture of a porpoise hanging in a Taiwanese vessel's fishing net in Taiwan. We don't allow those nets within 200 miles of the United States. Taking pictures of a turtle hanging in a net, the Georgia Bulldog shrimp boat.
I beg your pardon, please.
It belongs to the University of Georgia, Andy, and they were studying turtles. So here's a picture of the University of Florida, University of Georgia shrimp boat with the turtle hanging in the net. But they portray it as in Florida, and the shrimper catching a catching a turtle, you know, they had a picture of a net up on the beach. That net came out of the Rio Grande in Texas. It was a Mexican net that they left and let it drift ashore, you know, it was stuff like that, hard to fight. We didn't have the ability to fight, you know, it was rough. And my son was 16. You ought to try to explain to a 16-year-old why he can't do what his granddaddy and his daddy and his great-granddaddy did for a living, because somebody could move down here from Nova Scotia and live here 6 months and vote on what they did for a living. That ain't the way to manage fisheries, I'll just tell you that right now. We were mad about it. My wife loves everybody, but she hates some people.
How long was it between the time when they changed the status of the redfish, when they said you can't catch them commercial anymore, until the net ban?
About 7 or 8 years, I think.
And you guys were under pressure that whole time for that 7 or 8 years?
Yeah, but we could handle it because it was pressure from those fishing organizations, and they would go to Tallahassee, and we would go to Tallahassee. And it was so easy. See, the legislature, they chickened out after about 10 years and created the Marine Fisheries Commission, so that
That's where you had to go to.
yeah, and we had to go to them, and that was pretty bad too, because they said that a commercial fisherman had a conflict of interest and couldn't be on that Marine Fisheries Commission, but the recreational fishermen didn't have a conflict of interest and they got to be on it. But still, even as unfair as that was, we still won because we just had everything in our favor, and so it was an exciting time, and I kind of enjoyed it until it came to the voting part. That wasn't any fun.
Mike Davis handed me the mic and said, ask that man in the blue shirt a question.
No, I didn't.
There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Just who do you want to ask? Yes.
So it's been 25 years now. What exactly is the status of the fisheries? And in your opinion, is there anything that can be done to restore the fishery to somewhat like it was back then? What would it take?
It'll never come back. Net fishing is over.
But the fishery itself, I mean, why isn't it, what's the status now?
I really can't say. I don't think there's any more mullet today than there was back when we were fishing.
Nature's not gonna let it.
It's it equalizes, you know, so.
Nature's not gonna let it mullet take over because we're not catching them. There'll be more porpoise and more redfish to eat them. You know, nature's just not gonna let it happen. I've noticed in the last few years, less roe in the mullet. And that's nature's way of slowing it down. There's still a lot of mullet around. And if we caught them, then nature would take care of that too, just like they always have. So you can say what status is it. The status on the recreational is like it always is. They're just trying to hold them back with slot limits and you know, I mean, they're coming in here with $300,000 boats going to catch 2 grouper. I guess they can catch more. They can only keep 2.
I want to talk about how a fisherman made his living. It was not just something that you did, you learned. And then we had some very good fishermen around here. And most of them are dead because of old age. But Bill Osteen, he was one. He taught me, and he told me, he said, you know, I had an old kicker, we call it outboard motor kickers. And he said, you need good equipment. He said, because when you can make some money, you'll be able to go make it and catch fish. He said, if your equipment is not good, you'll break down and it'll cost you money. And I always kept good equipment at that time. And also, it's not a knack, it's something you learn, like Jerry. One summer, things were slow, and me and Don Campbell and Jerry went scalloping, picking up scallops. There was a lot of scallops back at Cedar. Remember, we'd get, Jerry, he'd get 5 bushels, and me and Don would get a bushel apiece. That was the difference. And he was an oarsman. He's very good at what he does. I kinda like to think I was pretty good at net fishing.
Tell about the story you and Heath went to Granddad's Ratty.
If Mike wants to, when he went grouper fishing, you know?
You went to the Ratty Hole,
Oh,
asked him if he thought anything was in it.
yeah. We, down on the shore, going up Dry Creek, if you go far enough, you go to what's called a ratty hole. And we like to strike holes when it's cold in the wintertime. And I've carried, one night we left out of here, me and Heath, and, we got down there, and we got to the ratty hole, and I said, Heath, you think anything in it? When it's cold, you can't see it. You gotta run a little bit of net in it. And he said, don't look like nothing to me. Well, I ran the net in it, and we almost sunk the boat. And then, funny thing about Heath, I had my glasses like this, and get fish slime on it when you're taking the fish out of the net. And I would take, and I'd lick them. And he said, Mr. Hattie, I can't believe you did that. But anyway, another quick story. He wanted to go grouper fishing with me, so we got up before daylight, and I had a 34-footer with a big diesel in it and a flying bridge, and we took off toward up to the northwest. Well, he crawled under the flying bridge and went to sleep. And we got up there, and we made a heck of a kick. We had a big old group. We got on the spot, and we started in that evening late. And he was sitting up there with me. And we were headed into Cedar Key, and he said, "Mr. Hattie," I don't know why he called me Mr. Hattie, but he did. He said, "Where are we?" Well, you know, grouper holes and just things you just don't tell people. And I said, we're down, we were up at Steenhatchee now. That's where we were off Steenhatchee. He said, Mr. Hattie, where are we? I said, we're off Crystal River. We kept on coming. We sitting up on the flying bridge, and pretty soon I could see North Key, you know, we're coming from the northwest, coming down. And I was looking at Heath over there, and he kept looking at North Key. Pretty soon he looked at me and said, Mr. Hattie, you lied to me.
Well, all I can do is tell you, you know, how disappointed, how it just eats you inside out. People take stuff from you that you know they're not supposed to take. That's with the net ban. I said, just come in and rip the heart out of the community, you know. When my older brother and my daddy, they orchard together, and I was young, and they'd get up at 4 o'clock every morning. And one time, one of these northers come along that had a lot of dew in it, and then that night it froze. There was icicles hanging off the roof all the way around. I said, "Lord, check them icicles." He said, "I know." He said, "But your daddy's gonna want to go." I said, "Yeah, he always goes." So he went around, got his hat, my daddy did, off the nail, ready to go. Walter said, "You can freeze to death if you want to, but I ain't going." Just make a pot of grits. And my uncle, he'd be hung over from the night before, and he would want something to eat so bad, and he'd say, "Vanny, I don't know what you're gonna do, but I can't eat them grits, they're still pumping." But, you know, there is not much more to say about the net ban, except I wish we could do it again. You know, he was talking about watching the old fishermen. One time he used to fiddle around with bird dog and follow the fish around the island. They go from one point to the other, they end up going north, little pods of fish. And Jim Green, and through there to Black Point, follow them right in Black Point Channel, and the tide got low, and they raised the water up right in the channel. So I went up and struck them. There's a pile of fish here. And as soon as I got them struck, here come a bird dog to me. And it was Mr. Dallas Booth. He says, "Son, if you'd have waited a few minutes and fish would have been out there on that sand, now you got all them moisture clumps." I said, "No, sir, you would have struck with fish if I hadn't." He said, "You're probably right." But you learn a lot by watching those guys, because they've been through a lot of hard times, you know, trying to make a living on blackland dirt, like Johnny Cash said.
Al,
Yes.
you mentioned in the video about how you transitioned from one fishery to the next, different times of the year. Why don't you just say give a little rundown, just take a year.
Okay.
What were you doing at what times of the year?
The way I made a good living, but I didn't do one fishery. I went from fishery to fishery.
Lot of equipment.
Yeah, and in the wintertime, when the grouper would be bunched up, we would hook and line, just like people fishing, but we were commercial fishing. And I had one guy with me one day that Don Campbell and I were out there, and we were catching, had a good bite, and Ed was sharp. He was a Yankee that came down here and moved in next to me, and that's another story in itself. Anyway, he was from New Jersey, and he said once when we were catching fish, he said, it's amazing the way the captain's attitude changes when we start catching fish. But that was it. But
That's because he threw the fit, because he couldn't get anchored on the rock just right.
well, I would do that too. But anyway, so I would grouper fish in the wintertime. I would pompano fish in the summertime. And I would mullet fish in the fall. So I'd move in and out of each fishery, and that enabled me to make a good living. If I would have done just one thing, because at certain times of the year that the fish are not here, but I would have not been able to make the living that I made. So with the new laws, with limited entry and all that, you couldn't do that. You can't do it today. And if talking about the net ban and all this, yes, it was hard and it was terrible, but I got past it. But anyway, you don't think I did?
So if you didn't have any more fish to sell, what happened to the people to whom you used to sell?
Well, every band uniform and every addition to every church in this area, North Florida, was built or bought with fish fries. So they either had to buy farm-raised catfish from Mississippi, or they had to buy chicken. It was a very traumatic time for families. I remember a woman walking up, and her husband was a fisherman. Had her 2 little girls with her. And she said, "What are we gonna do?" And I said, "I don't know." I really didn't. I didn't have any answers. And that kind of stuff just tore me up. It really did. And I'm not a bad person, but it made me one for a little while.
I wouldn't tell a story, I guess. I probably told y'all, I used to, I was a real good net hanger. I'd hang in on nets. So I'd get an old guy and his wife that lived up here in the government house to hang my nets for me. And they'd stretch them out in the front yard. It was bad about getting twisted in them, but the old guy's name was Junior Mccain. He had one leg, and his wife helped him. And one day I was around there waiting on him to finish the net up. My son was about that tall. He was running around, "Daddy, I'm hungry. Daddy, I'm hungry." I said, "You're always hungry." He said, so old Sugar, Junior, we called him, said, "Come on, boy, I'll see what I got in the refrigerator." So they went in the refrigerator and opened the door to a big old refrigerator, and it was a 6-pack of beer and a bowl of cold grits sitting beside it. So he took the cold grits and turned them upside down and broke them in 2 and gave half of them to Gerald. He was happy as he could be with his cold grits. From then on, Junior saw him, he called him Cold Grits.
I got the story about Junior McCain got his leg caught in a shaft of a boat when the breeching leg got caught and gnawed his leg off. So anyhow, he all my life he had one leg, but he didn't wear any shoes. He didn't wear a shoe, and I was sitting there on a fellow's porch one time on 6th Street. He was coming down the hill. was in summertime. And I didn't know it, but I heard hot, 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 hot. Every time that one foot hit that black road, he'd say hot, hot. You could have cut a chunk of fish bait off the bottom of that foot. That skin was about that thick on the bottom of it.
Talking about Junior. Junior, G.B. Campbell, which is he was an old time fisherman, Cedar Key, said, "Well, Junior got my gas," and the son said, "Daddy, how you know?" He said, "Well, because you can see. Now you got a picture of this. You can see one footprint and two fiddler holes. That was where the crutches were sticking down, and then one footprint and two fiddler holes." Y'all may not know what a fiddler is, but it's a little crab on the beach. But they make a hole. But those crutch tips would look every time.
So Junior's brother lived up on an island, and his wife, they wasn't that clean. Anyhow, Mr. Horace finds he was fishing up that way one day, and he pulled up there to the island to see if they needed anything. He brings it back to them from the store. And Junior and Curtis said, "Hey, old buddy, you in luck. Today's my birthday, and Reedmay's got a cake up there. Come on up, I'll give you some of that cake." Mr. Horace said, "Nah, I need to go." He said, No, come on up, you got to, old buddy." So he got him up there in the house and cut a piece of that cake. And Mr. Horace, he took a little bite of it. Man, it was bad. He said there was a old dog underneath the table. When they wasn't looking, he took that bite. And he said, "All right, Junior, I ate it, I gotta go," or Curtis. And he said, last time he seen that dog, he was on the table. Trying to get that cake out of his mouth.
I can't think of any more stories.
One time Heath went group fishing with me. I can always tell a Heath story. And we were out we used to use Lorenz C back then. Now it's GPS. We were out about 300 line. That was we got on a bike, and I was catching them in. This was my livelihood, and Heath would help me. Well, he would catch one, and then he would put the pole down, take the fish off, and he'd wash his hands. And this went on for a little while. I said, "Heath, what the hell are you doing?" I said, "We're on a chew. We got to keep biting." He said, "I can't help it. I got to wash my hands every time." So
Mama did that. Your mama did that.
Yeah.
There.
Anyway, I think I'm about storied out. Yes, sir.
How, relative to the number of people that were net fishing, how many of those people converted over to the clamming? And financially, has it been better or worse having clamming versus fishing? Just from an economic standpoint.
I'm gonna give the mic to Mike, but just about everybody. I mean, that's all there was. We were very fortunate to have the clam industry. He came along just at the net ban, and we were all getting ready. I remember sitting out there on Gulf Jackson, this area, that deep in water, sitting there watching a guy who didn't quit fishing, kept on, and I said, "Am I going to ever make a penny out of this thing?" Just wondering. And yes, I make more money, and I think everybody would say this. You make more money clamming than we did fishing. Yeah. Do you agree with that?
Yeah. But it was the young ones, and back then we were the young ones. The old fishermen, they didn't do it. They were too aggravated to work for anybody. They just kind of sat there in front of the judge's store and died off.
Signed to get this program started, and I needed 30 signatures, and I had to get with Dick Ziegler.
Yeah, had to get a gas station on it.
And get the 30 people just.
It's true. We may be making more money, However, there's just something about the chase, about catching crab or fish. Fish got tails, crab got legs, clams just in a bag. Also, you gotta remember, there were a lot of commercial fishermen all over Florida. And the state, when they find something that works good like this, they think, well, you know, if it's gonna work good there, let's do it everywhere. No place else has worked, because no place else is geographically located like Cedar Key, in between two rivers where everything's perfect for shellfish. And, you know, we just been lucky on that end of it. But a lot of the old fishermen and all the old fishermen around the state, they couldn't depend on it like we have. But it allowed us to stay on the water and work. And that's where we belong. And pretty much on the water, if you get out there and work, somebody's going to give you a good check at the end of the week. But it is work.
What happened to the nets after the net ban took effect?
Well, they magnanimously bought them from us for like 10 cents on the dollar. There's one right there. I'm thinking about taking it. Might need it one day. Where's Anna? One more. Go ahead.
I have a question. Is the territorial waters, United States, still 12 miles?
Yes, sir.
Okay, can't you go out past 12 miles and use a deck?
Yeah, but they addressed all that. You still got to bring it back across state waters to get in, and it's and the net fishing we were doing. You'll notice this net up here is only about 4 feet deep. It doesn't work very well out yonder. So,
I'm just asking,
yeah, no,
The rest of these
they closed all the loopholes.
all the other countries around us are still using nets.
Sure. Yeah, there's nothing wrong with that. They're very selective. You don't know how much we appreciate y'all coming here. We're not any good at this. We're doing it because it needs to be done. People don't need to forget what our forefathers did. When everybody came from England, hell, they ate clams because they couldn't catch nothing else. You know, I mean, it's this country was built on seafood, and y'all coming here and showing an interest really makes us appreciate that. We're not acting. We really don't enjoy doing this because we're not that good at it, but we sure appreciate y'all's interest and thank you for coming.